Welcome to Behind the Roast. This month is fully focusing on the Holy Grail of consistency. For this purpose, I traveled to the roastery of Kees Kraakman in the Netherlands. He's one of the co-founders of Café Kepler. We're going to discuss consistency in all its aspects. Plus, we will be able to see Kees roasting, as well as we will watch him and his team member taste coffees. So take your advantage with this unique information. Have fun.
An aspect that I think is really essential to the long-term success of a coffee roasting business, and that is the aspect of consistency. Short-term, you can be really excel as a roaster, but long-term, can you repeat these flavors that you develop with your roasting machine? And I think for that reason, consistency and customer loyalty often goes hand in hand. The most common errors that I have also made in my career as a roaster is that at times when you're becoming a little bit complacent and you're letting your roasting profile slip a little bit without you knowing, that your flavor profile of your coffee can change. And once clients then start to complain, then it's already too late, because that means that they have already been living in an unhappy state of mind about your coffees, your performance. So consistency is, although the word sounds so simple, it actually comprises a lot of factors that we are going to review in this program. I would say one key factor is always taste your coffees. Not just once when you buy them, but specifically when you're doing your post-roast evaluation. Put yourself to the test, like a blind testing, blind cupping protocols to really understand whether your coffees are as good as you think. It really helps. Also, if you work with multiple roasting experts, roast masters in your business, then put a blind cupping protocol in place to compare them against one another, and you will see that in this program. Then, of course, during roasting, there are various steps that are really important, essential. One aspect which has become more and more important for roasters is the temperature stability of the machine, because the machine is such a heavy cast iron. In the case of Giesen, really is an important component, and that weight, that mass can draw back a lot of energy, a lot of heat. So the focusing on temperature consistency, heat consistency is important. And then there are, of course, factors that you cannot directly influence yourself, but that you need to be aware for. So let's start looking at here at the roastery of Kees Kraakman of Café Kepler, where he is showing his craft that he has been doing for many, many years. And I hope you will enjoy this episode. All right, Kees.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Kees. It's really fun to talk about this important topic of consistency. And I know you have been in this craft for many years.
Consistent 20 years.
A consistent 20 years. And I'm not even going to comment on my side how many years that is, and I feel really old. So let's start. Maybe first there are some factors that relate to the setup of the roasting machine. And maybe we have a kind of a checklist for this program that we will also make available to the audience, of course. And in this checklist, there's a chapter of machine settings, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think first, roaster maintenance and cleaning practices. From your practice, what can you mention in terms of your maintenance and your cleaning practices? Yeah. What you do in order to maintain consistency?
It's a real life story. Last week we had a huge sound from the machine coming, and it became harder and harder and harder. We just got service from Giesen, So we knew it couldn't be the machine itself, because during the service they get out the fans, clean all the rotor blades, so there's no accumulating dust anymore, and then the airflow is an optimum speed, right? And you need the same amount of airflow to create the same coffee. And the machine will do that, but the fan needs to work harder. And at some point, it's so loud noise, and we couldn't figure out what it was. The next day, I took off the chimney, and I went with a chimney sweeper in, and there was just a pile, literally a pile of junk coming out of the chimney.
Yeah.
And then immediately the fan speed went down, and you have the same amount of airflow. The fan doesn't need to work so hard, which is better for your machine.
And that, of course, influences the flavor profile of the roasted coffee greatly,
Yeah, for
right?
sure. Yeah. So the machine tried to create the same airflow, but at some point, it just needs to work so hard to create a certain amount of kilopascal.
Yeah.
Then it just, it's not good for your machine. So that's a real life example of what you need to do in maintenance of the ducting, and the same goes obviously for the machine. That you make sure all the holes are open, and or you take out the fans yourself and clean them, or you call Giesen to let it do for you.
Let's go to the next chapter. That's a big chapter. I call them the pre-roasting influences, and that specifically is related to green coffee bean quality.
Yeah.
And then
obviously.
Again,
Well, again, what we also saw this morning, and we filmed up. We're wearing thick clothes. It's very cold currently.
It's very cold
outside, but also inside. Therefore, so that means the mass of the bean is colder. The air sucked into the machine is colder. Everything is against warmth at this moment. But in the summer, it can be the opposite. So then suddenly your beans 20, 30 degrees higher of temperature. And obviously that influences your overall roast time and your energy input a lot. So it makes more sense in the winter to have a little bit more energy or higher starting point, and in the summer vice versa.
Yeah. When I'm looking at the preparation of the green coffee beans, in this program we're cupping also some coffees, looking at different roasting styles, how that influences. But drying practices at origin can have an influence on the free moisture inside the bean, and also on the water activity of that moisture, and that obviously has an impact on potentially on consistency. And I think it's important that a roasting specialist understands this relationship and can, if necessary, make some adjustments in the roast profile, right?
Yeah, I'm not a specialist on water activity, and I also don't have the equipment to measure it, but during roasting you will find out, obviously. The more moist a bean has, the longer it takes for the moisture to boil and start drying out, and you can really start roasting. So it takes way more time with a more moist coffee. And as soon, especially in storage, when you see your coffee is not really going, so it takes a lot before it clears out in your warehouse, then during the year it can dry out. Or here, because it's quite moist, it can even sometimes attract some moisture. So a simple moisture meter can help you at least find out what your current moisture level is. And during roasting, if you we haven't mentioned it, but there are software programs where you can see just your current line of roasting developing, and using that software, in an instant you see whether you need more energy or less energy. So that helps a lot, a huge deal in creating consistency.
Cropster, but the Giesen Roast Profiler, the newest version, has that feature really well. Next chapter in this topic of consistency is, of course, the aspect of your roasting practices, right? And I would like to have you comment on the aspect of color. I think, knowing what roast color you will roast for and why is important.
Color is by far the most important. For me, it determines in such a great deal the end flavor profile. Not even time, but actually the effective color of it. So that's just a huge deal. You want a color meter to control that post-roasting. And you want to weigh out your coffee to see if you have the same amount of weight loss. It also predicts a lot if you have the same color on the inside of your bean. And that's just crucial for hitting the same flavor profile. The first one.
And the weight, the weight will be expressed through the shrinkage, the
Yeah, exactly.
weight that you lose, and that's a good indicator for roast color consistency, right?
That's our first indicator, because the first thing we do is always measure out the end rate.
Yeah.
And you see that, so for instance with Brazil, it should be, you do 6 kilo in and it should be 5.13 out. And if it's 5.11, you would know exactly, a little bit too dark. And if it's 5.15, you know, it's a little bit too light. And the color measuring just confirms that.
Yeah, and then your roast profiling software will help you profile and control your rate of rise. And is that for you important?
Yeah, so the rate of rise obviously is a different way of viewing how your bean temperature is developing. So it's the same actions on the ground, but or the root cause are the same actions, but it's important for me, especially in the final phase of roasting, because it can help you predict how long your roast development time is going to be. And we like to stretch it out a little bit for, depending on we have a filter roast or an espresso roast. But your rate of rise determines, especially in that phase, 30 seconds can mean a lot. So if your rate of rise is too high, especially in that phase, that's not desirable. So in the beginning, I don't mind if it's a little bit higher or lower, but especially in the end, and then I would say from cinnamon, so from caramelization on, you really want to have the same rate of rise. And also when you enter the first crack, you want to make sure you have the same momentum. So if your rate of rise, for instance, is 14 degrees per minute, which is on the high side for first crack entrance point, then you know for sure, or your coffee is going to be dark, or your roast development time is going to be too short.
So it's kind of the speedometer of a car, right?
Exactly that.
And then one aspect often forgotten as part of roasting is the cooling cycle. And the Giesen roasters have a very efficient cooling systems, but obviously in winter versus in summer, the cooling cycle can last, can be shorter or longer. And I think it's important to recognize that in the cooler, the coffee can still develop further.
Yeah.
So the roast color can actually darken up a little bit in the cooler, especially if you're forgetting to clean your cooler.
Yeah, and so we are both SCA trainers, authorized SCA trainers, and one of the key learning points, that your coffee needs to be cooled down within 5 minutes under the 30 degrees. So that's very measurable. That's what you need to do. Just measure it and see if that's still up to par. If it takes too long time, which is also annoying for your roasting, because you don't want the coffee in your bed, you want to actually get it out as soon as possible. But if it takes like minutes and minutes before it's cooled down, then you know for sure that the inside of the bean, the so the caramelization, pyrolysis still goes on, and you will have a darker color at the inside that you actually aimed for. You get a baked flavor, they call it, which is, it takes the finesse out of your nice coffee.
And then the fourth and also important topic is the post-roasting factors. I'm thinking of how you store, and how you package your roasted coffee beans, right?
Yeah, well, always at the same pace. So our rule is we pack it the same day. If you pack it a day later, pack it always a day later, so your coffee is exposed to oxygen the same amount of time and not in a different way. So it will age at the same time. We always pack it at the same day, and we never allow a coffee to become older than 3 weeks after we roasted it, before we sell it. I know some coffees can still be really good after 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but we don't let the coffee become to that age before after 3 weeks we get it out of the shelves. But I think it's really nice to, also for us, to have this talk with you. I think for everybody in the business, there is a tendency to just lean back at some point.
To be complacent.
To think it works, people are happy, we're selling our coffee. But if you take an outsider from a specialty level like you in, as like also the company this morning, is just, it brings you again to a new insights, and learns you the importance of actually be consistent and try to achieve that, which is obviously very difficult. Let's be honest. I think everybody who says he was super consistent, they're lying. There's always this human factor or the coffee has factor which is changing. So we should also settle for that. That it's a bigger roaster helps. If you have a 100 kilo roaster, then obviously that batch is very consistent. But are you able to sell it? So yeah, no, it's very nice to talk about. Thank you. So it's 3 things I need to pay attention to. For me, color is by far the most important. But the speed of the rate of rise and the length of the roast developing time are not to be underestimated. So full focus on that. I always eat some beans to check the inside. Then stop. And then So this is the Peru coffee we just roasted. In Kepler we have 2 house blends, Peru North and South blend. And the Peru and Brazil are big components in that. Brazil for nutty caramel flavors and Peru for some acidity. So it's also the Peru we just tasted. It's the same lot we re-chosen in the cupping we just did. So that's nice. And now back to consistency. So between each batch, I have the same heating protocol to put the same amount of energy in the roaster. So I get the same amount of energy back in each roast. So we do 1 minute off. I've here my timer. So I'm now 1 minute after roast. Then, yeah, you can put it on off, Willem, or auto, 1 down. Yeah, thank you. And now I heat it up roughly in 1 minute, like 5 degrees above my next starting temperature. In this case, 205 degrees. And then we are at minute 2, and then in 1 minute time, I leave it pendling on that temperature. So then I have a graph like this, roughly, and within each roast, we try to repeat that, also for consistency reasons. And again, the reason is because if you pump a lot of energy into the cast iron in between your roast, or nothing at all because you leave it off, then it gives you a different reaction in how far your dropping point is going to be. So for consistency reasons, we do that.
This is like making a first reconnaissance of the different flavors on the table, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and you always also want to taste them all at a high temperature. If you wait too long at your first pass, then the rest will cool down, and that's not. Then when I make the first pass, I usually go in a different way back, so I also taste them in a different order. And then one by one, I take a little bit more time per cup to see if I can find, in this case, differences between potentially Lauren's roast or mine roast. And then hopefully, Lauren's roast is better than mine. That would be optimum outcome of this cupping. Eh?
And so for this specific cupping, we're looking at how consistent are the coffees performing in the hands of 2 different roasters. And so it will be interesting to look at these evaluations, right?
Zeker.
I'm going to make one more pass in order to finalize my impressions.
So my guess is, and I'd like to hear if you have the same, is that cup 1 and cup 7 is the same origin. It's Brazil.
1. B. Brazil.
Oh, Lauren, baby. This one is mine.
Yeah.
And that one is Lauren's. Then cup 2 and 6 belong to each other, and that's the Ethiopia. GK. Yeah, so this is the fresher one.
Oh, this is the fresher one. Yeah. So 2 and 5 are the same?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Cup 3 and 8 are the Peruvians. Not good. So let's.
So let's see.
So this should be chicken bamba 1022. Otherwise.
Zuid. Dus dat is de Cordillera.
So this one is?
Dit is de Chiqui Bamba.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. 4 and 6 Panama Lajones. Ah, kut, Lauren. Godverdomme. Nou, 4 is Lauren. And 6 is Kees.
Yeah. So.
Woo!
So Lauren, we will. If you want to come stand here next to me.
Yeah, I'll just go.
Lauren.
I'll just go.
Yeah. Good, do your job. Well, I'm surprised and I'm happy.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's good.
So what where it comes to 4, what have you done differently with 4 versus what Kees might have done with 6?
Let me think. I think I have, to me, this may be a little bit too dark because it's like a dry. Maybe it's a little bit.
Which one? 6?
Number 6,
Yeah.
yes. So number 4 has more the acidic, light taste. So it should be a little shorter in our roasting process to develop itself. Yeah, that's the difference that we've made. But it could also be beginner's luck. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I think you're too humble about yourself. 4 might have had a little bit of a longer development time without being darker per se.
Could be.
And 6 maybe a little bit less development time, but roasted a little bit darker. That's what it almost seems like. Yeah. Cool. Great.
Thanks.
So now let's go back to the roaster and see what we can do there to improve in our end results.
Let's do that.
Oof, that was an amazing episode, wasn't it? So I hope you enjoyed this and that you learned a lot. If any questions come up, just reach out to us. We're there to help you. Thank you.